Okay, let's go ahead and start. Welcome, everybody. Hope you're having a good Friday so far. I'm so excited that Nancy Parsons is joining us today. We're going to be in webinar format, so I would ask that everybody go ahead and introduce yourselves on chat. Please do that. And then on the fourth Friday of every month, we have a networking session where you can meet each other in person. I want to tell you briefly about Purse Power, then I'll introduce Nancy. So Purse Power is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. We believe that if women who make 80% of all purchasing decisions would choose to buy from the companies that actively promote women, and we did that en masse, and we could create a funding stream for battered women's shelters in the process, that we could shatter glass ceilings and change lives. So that's what we're trying to do with Purse Power. These calls started when coronavirus hit, and we're just trying to connect you with each other, connect you with the national experts, and just give you some support during this difficult time. I want to shout out to my special guests, any shareholders that are on the line, and now we'll go ahead and get into the meeting. So Nancy, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I'm delighted.
Appreciate it. It's going to be great. Okay, please, again, share your comments via chat, but I need you to put the questions in the Q&A box so that we can really pay attention to the questions when we get to them later in the broadcast. All right, so Nancy is a top global expert combining the science of assessments with the art of developing people. She was awarded the 2019 MECO International Thought Leader of Distinction in Executive Coaching. So she's one of the top executive coaches in the country. Nancy sheds new light on personality strengths, inherent risks, and motivations using her tools. And she's also just recently created the first of its kind online virtual coach, providing an AI feedback experience for users, which is amazing. I mean, you're really leading the way. I knew this was going to happen, but you're the one who did it. Okay, this avatar coaching process helps people get self-awareness, gives them coaching feedback and developmental action planning for the 80% of employees that are never actually can access live coaching. She's also written the #1 bestseller on Amazon, Women Are Creating the Glass Ceiling and Have the Power to End It, which is a very intriguing title. Okay, let's begin. So we want to get to know you. Please tell us a little bit about your background and how you arrived here in your life and career.
Okay, well, I won't go too long because it's long. No,
okay.
I'm from the Philadelphia area originally, and I started in HR, actually was my career, and I worked at a shipyard. Then I was promoted to a coal mine, and I moved to Oklahoma in pipelines. So that was my early background, or like the first third of my career. Towards the end of that, though, I really gravitated as an HR director to the training and development, leadership development. And believe it or not, in the 1980s, I was actually developing 360 tools, late 1980s. Yeah. So, and using that in pipeline. And I realized I loved the development side versus the firefighting and the labor relations, union negotiations. So I knew kind of intuitively that you needed to change situations from the top with leaders and executives, right? So that's where we had to fix the house, if you will. So I went into that space and it didn't look back. I ended up leaving. I was with Sun Oil, Sunoco, and then went into consulting. I had a first business actually in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, where I had a human resource consulting and publishing business. Went back to the corporation for a little while. It's hard to leave the big companies, right?
Yes, it is.
And I went back and I did a stint at Williams, which many people in the energy industry do. And then again on my own, and formed this business with Kim Leverage, and she's an IO psychologist. We formed it in 1998, developed our assessments, and then we work with global clients using our assessments. Our clients are corporations and large entities, as well, even small businesses. And we also work with external coaches, right, who then have their own clients. So it's kind of internal coaches and external coaches are our key clients. Our assessments are validated for selection or succession planning, but we predominantly use them for leadership development, executive coaching, team development, things of that nature. So anyway, and then the most exciting thing, here I am at this point in my career, is what Donna mentioned, is this new CDRU coach. And I can't even take credit for the idea. One of our customers came to me a few years back at the U.S. Army Civilian University and asked me, she was certified in our assessments, Dr. Leslie McDade Morrison, and she said, can you possibly come up with some kind of multimedia coach? She said, we have 10,000 people who need the self-awareness, need the assessment debriefs, but we can't possibly pay for that, with live coaching. So I just said, well, yeah, I think we can. I'll get on that. So last year we did our beta. Obviously we developed over the last couple of years, and we launched it last year after beta testing. So we're really excited.
That is amazing. That's amazing. Good for you. You're gonna have to talk more about that. And guys, I've used the CDR assessment in my practice as a coach. It's a terrific tool, really terrific tool. Okay, so you've been in analyzing and coaching leaders for decades. What are the primary differences you see between male and female leaders? And I also know that you've done some work with female entrepreneurs. What insights did you get from that?
Yeah. What we found, first of all, the good news, we support what even APA, American Psychological Association, has found. Women and men are equally strong and capable leaders. Mm-hmm. There's a little slight difference maybe in the interpersonal sensitivity, meaning relationship building. Women are a little higher in that, but that's a good thing. That's in building teams, making connections, networking, and all the rest, right? Supporting your teams. And men sometimes are a little higher, just slightly, but not statistically significant in inquisitive, meaning a little more strategic. Women sometimes are a little more operational. But that's big averages. What we found in our research, where the difference is in the risk factors. We measure inherent personality-based risks. And these are things that show up under stress, adversity, when the heat is on or somebody's pushing your button, right? There's conflict. And then sometimes we act in ways that don't serve us or other people. They're ineffective coping strategies, right? Mm-hmm. Well, under those conditions, men, you're going to be shocked, right? Men tend to be egotists, upstagers, and rule breakers. So they have this aggressive moving against, taking control, saying they can do it even if they can't, where the women largely tended to be worriers, having a fear of failure, fear of making a mistake. So they tend to go inside their head and overanalyze and try to make sure they're 100% right. And then they don't speak up. So they lose visibility. And they don't appear like leader-like in the tough times, where the men are like all this bravado, blah, blah, blah. The men may be less effective, mm-hmm. but they come across as being courageous, even though it might not really be the best. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And then the other difference, when you talk about entrepreneurial, we also studied then, I said, hey, a lot of the women I'm coaching aren't like that, right? So we looked at corporate executive women, and then we also looked at CEO women running their own businesses. Mm-hmm. And what we found was their risks were closer to the men's risks, right? They were the aggressive moving against. And in fact, the entrepreneurial CEO women were identical to the men. They were egotists, upstagers, and rule breakers. So they pushed the boundaries. They didn't take no. They just charge on, right? And if they get a door closed, they just keep going. And then the corporate women were upstagers. They weren't egotists and they weren't rule breakers, but they were upstagers so they could stay in the game and talk and fight for resources or stay visible. The other difference with the corporate executive women was that they also tended to have really high interpersonal sensitivity. So they were able to build the relationships and work the networking too, to stay effective. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? But so the interesting thing is, so the women that stay stuck, that may have wonderful leadership profiles by way of their strengths, are being held back because they're worriers, right? A large number of women, but we can help them with that. We can mm-hmm. help them learn and practice behaviors to not let that derail their success. So that, to me, was the exciting part.
Okay, can you say a little bit about that? Because I know you and I had talked about that, about the worrier tendency is what gets in our way, to a great part, right? For women. So what recommendations do you make to women to try to overcome that?
Yeah. So if you tend to go inside your head and you overanalyze, or you freeze in fear because you don't want to make a mistake, you're probably a worrier, right? Mm-hmm. Or you slow down. The other thing that worriers do is they overanalyze, so they're slow decision makers because they're not quite sure. So there's a couple of things that they can do is, first of all, recognize it. Say, I am a worrier. And you want to look at, I have a kind of a risk analysis form that I can share with you. And, you want to identify, look at the last few times this happened to you. How did it show up? What caused it? Was it Joe? Was it this meeting? Was there pressure on you? What triggered this behavior for you to kind of clam up and go inside your head? Then what was the consequence when you did that? I've had women say, well, the company made the wrong decision because I didn't give my input, even though I knew it was wrong. kind of thing. So there's always a consequence, or Joe got the promotion and I didn't. And then what you want to do is think through, what can I do differently? It's things like partner with somebody who's not a worrier and have them pull you out at a meeting, like somebody you trust. But the other thing, I think what's critical is practice. Whether you practice with a friend, a spouse, a mentor, or coach, you want to practice under pressure how to speak and not let that worrier take control. Because if you don't practice under pressure, under simulated pressure, even though in your head you know you need to do something different, it's going to be really hard for you to change that behavior. So you have to practice. You have to anticipate Joe's going to be a jerk when he talks to me or whatever, or he's going to make me feel bad. But I've already got a plan and this is my tactic. You've got to practice that tactic without Joe right there a couple of times so that you'll do it in the moment. Right.
Yes.
So that for me is the best advice. Know it. First thing you have to do is own it. You know it. I do this. Kind of unravel, analyze when it's happened and it's really hurt you. And then brainstorm. And you can brainstorm with a coach, a friend, a colleague. What can I do differently? Then practice that. Make yourself notes that what you're going to say at a meeting and stick to it.
Very good. Very good. The other thing I've also suggested people do is watch people that are effective in that situation and look at their behavior and see what they're doing.
Absolutely. And then model that. There's different ways, but I'm just saying, to gain your comfort, I find practice really helps.
Absolutely.
It's something under stress, you want to make sure you're able to pull it off.
Very good. Very good. Okay. All right. Terrific. Okay. So during this time of uncertainty and change, do you see women as having any particular leadership advantages?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, especially with everything virtual. And there's data out there too. It's that relationship ability, the ability to empathize, the ability to reach out, the ability to read body language, even through the Zoom or whatever you're using. So that a higher interpersonal sensitivity, that ability to really develop and foster teams and care about people in a different way, have that compassion, is helping women really through this virtual world of craziness as leaders. I'm reading that, I see it, but I just think those people skills are showing themselves as to how important they are. And women are just most women are naturally better at that.
Very good. Very good. Okay. All right. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges you faced as a business owner or leader, particularly during tough times? And then what did you face and how did you navigate it? And what did you learn?
Yeah, I mean, obviously way back when, in my early days when I was still in corporate, actually when I moved to Oklahoma and was responsible for HR and pipelines, in those days, I was blackballed at one point by like superintendents. So my customers wouldn't talk to me. I was the only woman doing that. So I had to continue to work to gain trust to get people to finally say enough and finally give me that chance to be able to work with the field. So that's kind of lonely when that stuff happens.
Yeah.
But that was like, again, that was in the 80s. So that was tough. Or I'd be invited to meetings after the meeting was over, just crazy stuff. But you just persevere, you're trying to do the right thing. But anyway, in business, it's really tough. Like our first tough time was 9/11.
Oh yeah.
And some of our customers were there and their building went down, and that was like one of our largest customers. So we had to go without this revenue, and that was early in our business. So that was tough. One other time I remember we had one of our largest customers, we gave them a bid for this type of work that they wanted. And we probably weren't the most skilled at writing the proposal at that time. And what happened was the scope changed dramatically from what we had bid on. And they just kept adding and more people from their big company corporation involved. And we didn't have it in the contract to add more billable dollars for that time. So we kind of Kim and I just kind of sucked it up and went, well, we value this client, so we've got to do the work. We've got to, it was all this analysis and developing actually a new tool for them. But in the end, you know what they did? So we were eating many, many hours. They came back, they actually said, we know you put a lot more into this than this original. We're going to pay you for the difference. Give us every hour that you put into this.
Nice. Good.
They did it, but we set ourselves up. So it's just kind of, make sure you're good at contracting before you write those contracts.
That's important. Well, the other thing you told me yesterday was that you've gotten creative in tough times too. You found a way to really kind of think out of the box and challenge your thinking. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what we've learned too, is you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to say, okay, this isn't working anymore. This is dried up, or they're not responding. What else can we do? What can we do differently that we haven't done before? Or what customers can we reach? So we really try, and what partnerships can we develop? So we are constantly kind of morphing around, figuring out the best way, because it's not easy when you're a small business, especially during this COVID period, and then here was my timing coming out with a whole new product during COVID.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although the good news was, coincidentally, it was virtual. So that was we were lucky there. But yeah, you just, and we've tried a number of things, obviously books and everything else. So you're moving in a lot of directions. One thing I learned early on in Oklahoma, when we were based 17 years in Oklahoma in Tulsa. And I remember one of the first things I learned in marketing, because that's not my background, right? You just have to do a number of different things all the time. You can't go down one lane. You have to have a diverse portfolio in your marketing toolkit,
Efforts,
social media, the whole thing. So we've been pretty good, I think, at, taking more risk than we have in the past. We've been risk averse generally in a lot of ways, kind of grew organically. And now, like this year, even I've taken on investors, never done anything like that before. So it's been pretty exciting and pretty different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and are women more risk averse than men are?
Yes, that's your worrier.
Okay,
now, I'm not particularly that, but we've always just, we've always just been organic. So we haven't had to take any great risks, or maybe we should have and didn't. But now, because of technology, we had to take the leap. You can't jump in that game if you don't do it well, right? And it takes a lot of resources.
Right. I get it. All right. So that piece about just taking the leap, taking the risk. I mean, when it's very hard for women to do, any thoughts about that, about how to do that?
Yeah. You know what? This is going to sound funny to you, or maybe to some of the people, but for me, sales has always been kind of icky. It just doesn't. I mean, if people come to me, it's great, but I don't like going out. I've had to reframe that. I'm learning from our sales team too. And because of this whole endeavor, I'm learning to lose that fear, that anxiety of the sales, talking to somebody, putting it out there, which may sound funny because I'm an extrovert, but I also am detached, and I have what we call higher interpersonal sensitivity. So rejection in that is hard. So that probably causes me to not be so out there initially, but I'm learning to get better at that. I mean, it's kind of like, it's exciting that I'm really learning more in the last couple of years, probably, like you can't even imagine. And you would think maybe at my age, I wouldn't be, I'd be kind of easing out. Well, now I'm going on acceleration.
Awesome. That's awesome. Me too.
Yeah.
So how about, there's something in there around reframing too, I think, in terms of the challenge and the sales and getting more comfortable. What are you doing in your headset?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That is obviously, I have this passion that we're going to really help so many people be self-aware, so they don't underutilize their talent because they don't know what it is, or they don't derail early. So I'm now so mission driven. The rest of the noise doesn't matter. So I've reframed that in my head, that this is my calling. I've got a job to finish now that's even more important. The assessments are wonderful and helpful, but we've only worked at the top of the house, so to speak, with top executives. Now it's time to help more people who really need it, so we can help change their lives early, because every executive, just about everyone I coach, says, I wish I'd done this 30 years ago. Right. And I'm sure you get that. So let's bring this down. So when people are in college, maybe their MBA programs or so forth, or early in their careers, they get on the right track. So many people have no idea what their potential is, what their true talent is. It's, in fact, studies show that only 10 to 15% of people are actually self-aware, even though most people think they are. So, and what I find, even with like the college kids, for example, they underutilize, they don't know their capabilities. So they go for like, liberal arts or this or that, when they could be the engineer, the scientist, all kinds of things. So it really makes sense to have, it's just not natural or intuitive to understand ourselves the way the assessments can peel back all the layers.
Right.
So that's why I think you need to use those scientific type assessments that go deep.
Very good. All right. So let's see here. Your latest book title, I think, is amazing. So Women Are Creating the Glass Ceiling and Have the Power to End It. That's really important. It's intriguing. What are your primary findings and what should we do about it?
Yeah, so it's what I touched on before. What we found is that women have that worrier risk. So they're pulling themselves out of the running, but they can work on that and turn that around. So that's where they have the power to change it. Now, we certainly need support from the companies. They need to understand these data too, right? The companies, the executives, succession planning people, and they don't quite yet, not enough of them, because the other thing that has to happen, we want women and others to develop based on who they are, not on some cookie cutter leadership model. And unfortunately, that's what businesses do today. And women need some different training than their male counterparts. Everybody's different. So we need to go like micro to macro about the person, self-awareness, and then you build out. So that's what we found is, women are being held out who are more talented than a lot of these men who are getting promoted, but they're not being seen. But they can change it. I guess the good news of that title, I know that title's a little provocative in a way, but what's to me so exciting is women can change it. We don't have to wait for men or somebody else or organizational structures to change it. We can start changing it and we can help other women and they can help themselves. So that to me is, we hold the key, right?
Yes.
Let's use it. It's kind of like your purse power philosophy in a way. It kind of dovetails that when you see the strengths of women as leaders, they're phenomenal. And we know, here's the other part of the research in the book. We've got all this. Women, when you have more women at higher levels, companies perform better.
Yes.
And not only that, even on 360 data, women perform better. What is it? Folkman and Zinger has done a lot of studies on that in the past, like 10 years. So women tend to be exceptional leaders, but they're held back prematurely, but they can start making the changes so that they don't get held back. So that's why I use that kind of controversial. We're causing it ourselves by, going in fear or whatever those coping strategies are, but we don't have to go there. Once we know it, as we talked about earlier, we can turn that around.
Yeah, very good. Well, it's interesting. I'm doing a talk on Monday for International Women's Day.
Oh, cool.
And I was doing some research, and that whole broken rung idea, apparently 30% more men are promoted into their first supervisory position than women are, just at the very, very beginning of their careers. Do you have any insight about how we get more attention to that and how
it's, well, first of all, let's understand leadership effectiveness because of those kinds of historical processes where the man gets the job because he looks the part, talks the part, went to the right school, knows the right people, whatever. And traditionally, people are just more comfortable promoting men early. But here's the truth of it. It's not working because for decades, studies have shown 50 to 75% of leaders are not effective, right? And those are consistent over time. So it's not working. So we need to change it. So right there, there's an ROI on leadership development. We've got to do something different. Until companies start using scientific measures like ours to really see talent clearly, objectively, it gets rid of the bias. There's no bias, right?
Right.
Until they start doing it, all the same is going to keep continuing. It's still going to be hard to identify the true talent. So we identify true talent. And again, until you add that, it's always going to be these subjective or bits of information. And here's the other thing. When people are biased, unconscious or otherwise, I am of the belief it's not with malice. It's just how they were raised and how they think and, who they feel comfortable with. It's kind of that whole socialization process.
Yeah.
Now we need to change that. I get that. But at the other hand, we have to use different processes, because, I remember years ago when I worked in pipeline and we were interviewing for engineers, and I had a woman engineer. When I was at Sun, we were taking some of the people from Williams, but anyway, and we do panel interviews with all men. And what I noticed on those interviews and over the years, They were so nitpicky with every woman. Wait, this one woman came through, and I can give her first name and she knows who she is, Edith, right?
Mhm.
I still colleagues with her to this day. She had an MBA. She'd worked in pipeline. She was a mechanical engineer. And they're looking at other candidates who don't even have close to that. And they're nitpicking her to death. That's the kind. So there's also, I just put out a post too. You know, in the book, we look at perceptions are a real problem too. Because a woman could have the same or better qualifications and she'll be nitpicked or picked apart. And then on the other hand, when men and women have the same risk behavior, there's a positive or supportive term usually used. Oh, well, if he's an egotist, oh, he's just courageous. He knows what he's doing. If a woman is an egotist, which it does take, 70% of leaders are egotists, right? But if a woman is, she's a bitch. I mean, so the language matters too on perceptions.
Sure
but
does.
until we start using objective measures, we're not going to get past all that. I don't see how you can, because here's the thing, what I tell groups, historically, we haven't changed since the beginning of time.
Right.
We're still promoting the same people, and we use better semantics. We pay a lot of dollars to use maybe some different glitzy processes, but we're getting the same outcomes. We really haven't changed what we do. We need to add science to what we're doing.
That's a really excellent point. Excellent point. Okay. So in addition to that, women have potentially lost seriously decades worth of progress due to the pandemic. Given all that you know about human behavior, what do you think comes next? And what do we need to do to regain our momentum? And what's that going to look like?
Yeah, I think obviously, and we're seeing it all my colleagues are talking about it. Resilience is critical.
Yeah.
But I also would take it one step further, and that's that self-awareness is the most important. It's hard to drive yourself to true success if you don't know yourself well enough. And that means strengths you don't even know that you have, or gifts. Need to know your gaps. And you do need to know your risks, because when there is a lot of stress, your risk behaviors are likely to show more than your strengths. And then you also need to know your drivers, or what motivates you, because that's the best way to relieve your stress, is to do things that makes you happy and excited, right? To get you balance again, to get that resilience. So it's resilience, but I would add that it's tied to knowing yourself really well, self-awareness and resilience. And I think also being brave, asking for support, going to people, talking to people, networking. I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many people have coached me in different ways, and I love it, and I ask for it, and I solicit it. So as long as I've been in business, there's so much I need to know and learn.
Yes.
And I'm doing a lot of things that are very new to me. So I'm just encouraging, be resilient. Don't be afraid. Ask questions, ask for help. And people, when you ask them, they want to help you, but know yourself too. And where you have limitations, like you need to work with somebody else who can shore that up for you. Don't work to your true gaps or weaknesses. You want somebody else that can come in and maybe help you with that one part, if that's the one part you're missing. Because the other thing I'm going to tell you is, especially small business owners, we tend to wear too many hats. And sometimes that's not really effective, because people are not hardwired to do 10 different things well. So if you can limit that to maybe 5 or 6 that you're really good at, and get somebody else or a couple people do those other things, I think that's the way to manage to success too.
Yeah.
It's making sure that's that self-awareness though. What am I bringing to this organization that's successful, that's a gift? And what is it that I need support on? And being real about that. Because when you try to be everything to everyone, you're more apt to fail or have problems.
Yeah, you can't do it.
And you're just burn out. You're just, there's nothing left.
Right. The other thing that was occurring to me as you were talking is this idea of the stories you tell yourself and how you see what you're looking at. Can you talk about that for a minute in terms of helpful ways to reframe or challenge the stories?
Yeah. And especially, like, again, depending on a person and her profile, what she's like, for example, a lot of women that are most successful have what we call lower adjustment, meaning they're hard on themselves, self-critical, too self-critical. And in those cases, those women, and like I said, a lot of entrepreneurs, it's giving yourself a break, looking at what you've done good each day, writing those journals of affirmation, what's working, because you're always looking at what's wrong.
Yeah.
for yourself and possibly at your people too. And that can be hard. And then I do think you do need to look at yourself on always seeing yourself where you want to be, where you want to succeed. I think that story, like I have a story in my head and I'm hoping to get there and I'm planning to get there. And that helps me. Like it helps me during the darkest times, or it helps me when, we're not having maybe a couple of sales meetings or something we thought we were going to have, or who knows what, there's always, as you're moving, there's always issues. So I think always keep that vision in mind. Why are you doing this? Who are you helping? What is your, and those stories I think help. And the stories of your past successes, right?
I can do this. I've done it before. Yeah.
Yeah. I've done this, or look what someone so told me I was good at this. And it kind of surprised me.
Okay. All right. So what have you learned from the pandemic? And by the way, guys, please start to put your questions in the Q&A box. So we'll get to those in just a minute. So what have you learned from the pandemic?
I think the first thing is you never know what's going to happen. I mean, surprise, pandemic's here. I mean, who would have ever thought, we hear this VUCA term all the time about volatility, change, and blah, 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 that we were living a VUCA.
There you are. So we are. Yes, we are.
And we're still climbing out. So, I think, again, knowing yourself, know how to be resilient, building reserves. For me, I learned, how do you adapt? How can you adapt if something doesn't go how expected? And I also think it's about, like you do, helping people network and come together more, helping each other. So even my colleagues in the coaching community and all, I belong to the Alexel group, and we're a community of coaches, small community of like 40 of us, but we reach out and help each other. I just think those things matter when things get tough.
Yeah, boy, don't they? They really, really do. There's a meme of some kind that they're talking about the crisis in 2020, and they're saying you're going to be more specific.
Yeah. And one last thing I guess I have to add on the personal side is your family or support system. So important. My husband's wonderful. My family's wonderful. And then my team at CDR, I'm telling you, we could outperform any team. They're just tremendous. We've got a great team. So that makes, during tough times, that makes me feel really good. That gives me the confidence of success because of the team.
So back to your point of surrounding yourself with good people that have different strengths than you do, right?
I'm not kidding when I say my people are rock stars. They are.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, guys, I've got one more question for her, and then we'll start on your questions. So please add those. So I'd be interested in hearing about the best piece of advice you've ever gotten and you've ever given.
Oh, that's a that I've ever gotten. I guess early on, actually, when I was in pipeline, I had a boss, and he was like VP of operations, whatever, and I reported to him, and he saw something in me. He goes, "Don't change who you are." I was looking to do some advanced degrees, other things. He goes, "What you've got, you can't train, so stay true to yourself."
Oh, that's good advice.
Yeah. So I did. I was like, okay, it gave me confidence that, that I could think, I could problem solve. And so I think those things, that really just helped me a lot. In terms of advice I've given, I have to say, there's two. One's personal, one's professional. But professionally, I've been able, through the assessments, again, helping people see that they're calling, or they're not in the right roles, and how to help them, or they're not in the right major. And I've had them breaking down in tears to say, thank you, thank you, thank you. I knew in my heart something wasn't right. Now I know what I'm doing. So for me, when you can help somebody at that level, I remember a college gal, just her parents or grandparents, everybody wanted her to do this, and she knew that wasn't her, and she just like fell apart saying, thank you. This is, that kind of thing. Now I know, and I knew in my heart, but I couldn't get there. I couldn't figure it out. So that kind of thing for me. And then personally, this may sound funny, but I have married kids. Three of my four children are married, and they're millennials. But I remember saying, and this is, I want to say to women out there, because I think it's important with relationships, right? And especially when you're raising kids or with everything going on, And especially when your kids are still in school and all this, make sure you still pay attention to your relationship. Have a date once a week. We do that because I've seen too many friends over the years where they focus on the kids or work and not on each other. And then by the time the kids go into college, it's hard to patch that back together. So I know that I'm not supposed to be like Dr. Joyce.
Hey, you're right.
I'm not. But my husband and I still have dates. I mean, it's always worked for us. So that's some advice you didn't ask for.
It's useful. It's great. I totally agree with you. My husband and I have been together for 45 years. And we're out on the same page. Yes. Okay, so we've got some questions. Someone is asking, what is upstaging? Could you please give us an example of what that is? Yeah.
Upstaging is overshadowing someone else, talking over them. So under stress, these people just dominate the airtime. They can be melodramatic and they can just dominate and, usurp everybody else's opportunity to speak. And they also can be very pushy, right? And I'll be honest with you, I actually have a risk as an upstager. That's one of my risks. And my business partner, Kim, said to me years ago, you'll love this. I think it'll make sense for you. When I'm trying to persuade her about something or I'm getting excited, and it's with passion, you're usually trying to push your point of view. Salespeople often do this. She said to me, easy killer, I got it 5 minutes ago. So and here's the problem with upstagers in business meetings. They're hogging all the airtime and talking, and they're not listening, and they're not getting other people in who they need to hear from. So that's the problem with upstaging.
Yes. Very good. Very good. You guys, and by the way, I was thinking as these questions come in, she's an expert on interpersonal dynamics. If you've got some people that you're struggling with, I think that you would be able to give them some good insights. So they may want to ask some of those questions. All right. So Case Lane is saying in corporate, many promotion opportunities used to come from just being in the office. But if companies continue to work remotely for the long term, what adjustments should professional women make to ensure they're seen and recognized for leadership positions? That is a great question, Case.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. And I think, again, I have to rely on, are the meetings being set up and facilitated properly to get everybody some input for visibility, right? Don't have a bunch of upstagers hogging it, running it, and egotists and not sharing and soliciting input from everyone. So well-facilitated meetings that help people shine. Supervisors, managers need to be coaching their people and building developmental plans, action plans with every employee so that they can, improve that visibility. And again, I go back to, you do need to use assessments, especially as we're hiding behind these screens, because how can you possibly tell someone's potential? Seriously.
Right.
You need to have another tool in your toolbox to really understand people's talent and how best to develop and support them.
Okay. All right, guys, keep asking your questions. One of the thoughts I had is you've got a long, distinguished career. You've accomplished a whole heck of a lot. What do you wish you would have known at the beginning?
I wish, well, first of all, one other thing, I wish I would have known more as a business person, as a smart business person. I have to be honest, I'm good in my lane, right? In my lane of the work we do and so forth. But in all honesty, I'm not a great business person in a sense of the financials, the running, those sorts of things. That's kind of so I have people that are good at that, but I wish I had, that better, some of those sides a little better, and had worked on some of those growth plans earlier than I did. So that would be my regret on that. Oh, one other thing I want to say, and this is for business women, please protect your intellectual property. I know this is from left field, but I learned early on, and thank God I had taken these small business classes and all this and so I protected our intellectual business, our property early on our assessments, on everything we were doing. And it came in handy. It actually saved our business, or we wouldn't be here today, because we ended up in federal court because some folks lifted our intellectual property, claiming it for their own.
Oh, wow.
It could have put us out of business, seriously. And we prevailed. But again, you don't even want to ever have to go to federal court for that, but we had to. Had we not, did the actual copyright certification with the Library of Congress and so forth, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today.
Holy
So it's that
smokes.
important. It is. Please protect everything, protect everything, protect everything. The other thing I'll give a shout out, our business insurance also kicked in during that process because the groups countersued us. So it kicked in our insurance, and we had the Hartford. They were wonderful. They couldn't have been more supportive. And I'll never forget that. They wanted us, to keep going, whatever. And how many insurance companies do that for you? So I know it was a number of years ago, but the Hartford was wonderful. So have business insurance too. Good business.
Great advice. Great advice. And I want to do a shout out for Susan Chair. She's on the line. She's our intellectual property attorney. And she is fantastic at trademark. She's wonderful. So Susan.
Good. Yeah, that too. Trademark and copyright. Absolutely.
Okay. Amy Kessler is asking, hi, Nancy, thank you for being here. What do you think will change or is changing as a result of everything we've been through in the past year? What are the concerns that you see and hear about the workplace right now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the biggest change is we're all realizing we don't all have to be in some office every day, right? So I think it's going to change how often we're together and that kind of thing. And I think we're still working our way through that. But I do think it makes it more imperative that we meet like this, at least at a minimum, more frequently, and face to face. I mean, it's interesting where we used to do a lot of phone calls. I very seldom get a phone call anymore. I don't know about all of you. So the face to face, eye to eye helps.
Yeah.
We're going back in person too, and I love the in person. But I think we have to be ready that it's going to be a mix now. We're not going back to the same where we were all in the office all the time.
Right.
And the other thing, I guess, is how do we help our employees get work-life balance when they are working at home? I mean, I know a lot of people that now are working far more because they don't have the commute and this. They're working 10 and 12 hours instead of maybe the 9 hours that they used to be working. Yeah. And it's harder to manage their time. So I think we have to help them with those I would say, how do we adjust these schedules? How do we still make those connections we need to make? Some live and some virtual. And then how do we manage our time? And also, like you were talking about earlier, and how do we develop talent, understand talent, and work with people on their development plans? Every employee should have a developmental action plan. Every employee.
Very good. All right. Someone is asking here, how do you deal with defensive people? And what's going on there? Talk about what's going on there with defensive people and then what you do about it.
Yeah. Now, of course, it's a little different because I have the luxury. I have all their data. Donna, I even have your data. I know. So when you have data as a manager, it's a lot easier because you know to expect it. And then you can actually call. And even if you don't, though, you can call them on it and say, I notice you're being resistant or feeling a little defensive. I think you call people on the behavior and say, look, I'm here to explore with you and help you through this. What is it? How can I help you? So it's kind of, you got to call them on it. And then you want to still be positive. Are you, is this piece of feedback personally concerning you, or is there something else? Help them separate, because sometimes they're upset with the situation, not upset with you. So ask questions, I would say, when they get defensive. But I think you got to call it out. If you pretend it's not happening and then you kind of back off, then you've had a non-productive coaching session. So identify the behavior. When I was in pipeline, I had a boss get really harsh, kind of yelling at me. And I went, whoa, are you upset with me or this issue? I made him pull it right apart. And he said, oh no, I'm not upset with you at all. It's this thing. I said, okay, well then let's talk about it. So calling out the behavior. I notice you're angry. I sense you're feeling pretty upset about this. And helping them through it, so then you can have the productive discussion.
When I was young, somebody gave me a tool called Name It to Tame It.
There you go.
That's the exact idea, is you just say, that's the third time you've asked me the question. Or I saw that you crossed your arms and your face turned red.
Oh yeah.
And you stop. You don't say another word, and they'll fill in with what's really going on.
Absolutely. And the other thing that you do need to do, of course, is build a trusting relationship with all your employees first. So when you have that trust and they know you have their back, then you can give them feedback. Yeah. So when you say that or you question them, you seem really defensive or you seem off put, or if you're working with, here's another risk that I didn't mention. If you have a false advocate, this is the person that's passive aggressive, right? And it's very prevalent. How do you deal with that? So when they say, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And I'll say, no, no, no. You know, they're not with you because inside their head, they're saying, this is a terrible idea. So I'll say, okay, if it was done, I'm just playing.
Yeah.
Well, okay, tell me what you think could go wrong. What am I missing? What has been your experience? So you've got to draw them out to make sure they're committed, because when they go like this, oh yeah, it's fine. It's not fine.
Got it. Got it. Okay. All right. Someone else is anonymous here. They're asking, how do we learn body language to use on Zoom? That's interesting.
Ooh, I think you have to pay attention. I mean, you just have to look for their eyes. Are they blinking? I am not a specialist on body language, but what I can tell you, some people are better at it than others. People with higher interpersonal sensitivity, largely women, are better at reading body language. We notice it more. People with low, they don't get it because they're not even looking for it. So you have to look for it. And you can kind of start to sense, if you know the person well enough, if they're checking out, if they're angry, if they're brooding, or if they just go straight like this. What is their norm? And then maybe what's different in this scenario. Normally they're this, then all of a sudden you notice something different. That's body language telling you something.
Yeah, that's interesting. Somebody needs to write a book on that too, because I think that.
Yeah, I think there are some specialists. I've actually heard speakers years ago talking about body language. It's pretty cool. You'll need to find somebody that can speak to that.
Yeah. Sounds great. Okay. All right. I think we're running out of time here. So what I'd like to ask is, at the end of the day, what do you want people to have learned from you?
I think the most important message I can tell any group is to really know yourself, become self-aware, go through an assessment, a deep assessment, so that you really know at a deep level your true talent, strengths, gifts, any gaps, and you will have gaps, and then also risks and what you love. And the best career advice I can give somebody is make sure you're working towards your strengths. Right. And doing what you love. I tell college students this all the time. If you do those two things, so work to your drivers, you can't do one without the other. So if you're really good at something, but it bores you to tears, you won't be successful. You'll be miserable. And if you have a big heart for it, but your skills aren't there, you're going to fail. You need both. And if more people would do that, people would be just so happy in their jobs. They'd, have a skip in their step. They'd be passionate. They'd be more productive. So we really need that alignment. And I feel like I know from data, it's not working out as well as it should be.
Yeah, that's really good insight. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what do you think, what actions would you like our audience to take after coming out of this session? So they've learned, this is what you want them to learn. What do you want them to do?
Yeah, I want them, first, again, like I said, know yourself, try to find a way to know yourself. And then second to that, understand your risk factors too, because these are the things that can derail your success or make you miserable. They can just, and they actually in many ways make teams and organizations unsuccessful, or they don't reach their true potential because of those risks. So I would say try to get a reading on that so that you can manage them more productively. I've had whole teams, leadership teams that were false advocates. So as a team, they worked on that. How could they get past that together to be more successful with each other and their clients? So I think try to know yourself really well so that you can tap into what's great, manage, neutralize those risks, and then of course, do what you love to do, what makes you happy.
Right. Well, the other thing I find is if you've got a team that understands that we've all got strengths and weaknesses, and they're kind of a double-edged sword, and it's not that you're good or bad relative to anybody else. It's about coming together as a team and playing to your strengths, right?
Yes. What you want is diverse teams, diverse in the way of profiles. We find when teams have different profiles, all these differences, they outperform homogeneous teams. Okay. So unless you're like all engineers or something, if it's a general management team, which most of the businesses are, you need a mix of profiles, diverse profiles. And the nice thing about if you do use measures, it brings in natural diversity of gender and race too, so that you get that wonderful diversity that you can actually outperform. But when we all think alike, we draw on the same ideas, et cetera, approach, we're losing a big part of the business. So you don't want to hire people who are like you.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You don't want to do that. Or people that are all of one type. You need to have a lot of diversity.
Which that's where my mind was going to, is around all kinds of diversity that we're trying to have inside businesses. But the other thing that I've experienced is I had a client, for example, that was operating a certain way. Everybody they hired had the same personality, consensus driven, warm, friendly. Let's all move together. Let's have lengthy conversations about everything, right? They weren't getting anything done.
Right.
So they had to hire some doers, some executors, some people that would actually get it done. Well, long story short, the cultural antibodies kicked them out. Kick the doers out because
yeah. Oh yeah, it's like if you have a team, we had one that was Fortune 100 food industry, and they were all high operations, low strategy, and they were really low on interpersonal sensitivity. To try to bring a few creative, strategic people, and they'll throw them out the door because they're command and control. So when you have too much, as I say, homogeneous team, it's a disaster. Until you really change out several members, not just one, because that predominant, like you said, that social norm will reject the new type or make it hard for them.
So that's an interesting conversation, by the way. So particularly if people are inside companies, is how do they get the leadership to understand that?
Well, I honestly don't think you can get that until you use an assessment, and not to keep going back to that. But when people see data, they're not defensive and they get it. But without data, it's hard to say, well, look, Joe's creative, Sarah's this, Sarah's that. And it's hard to really manage and understand the nuances to that. So I think you do need a tool to really understand where are these differences and what do we bring to the table and what we find. And some teams may have gaps where they need to pull in some people, where they might be too, lopsided over here. So they need to figure out. It doesn't mean you have to change everybody on your team, but you need to think about, well, if we're going to be all this, how are we going to cover this area? What are we going to do? Maybe the next level in the organization has some people that can help. So it's a business strategy thing. How do we make sure our people align with the strategy? Mm-hmm. And what we find sometimes they don't.
Right.
And that's why a lot of businesses fail.
Right.
Boom, right there.
And if you hire people like you, then you've got the same blind spots, right?
Absolutely. You have same blind spots and you lack certain skill sets and other things to get the job done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Very good. All right. So do you have any final words of wisdom to share before we close up the program?
I do have, in honor of Women's International Month, in honor of women, I am going to offer with our new CDRU coach, which is an in-depth avatar coaching thing, 5 complimentary CDRU coaches, which involves assessment and these in-depth coaching sessions, as well as action planning. So to the first 5 women business owners who contact me through our email at cdrinfo@CDR Assessment Group. You can also contact us through our website, cdr-u.com. So okay, the first 5.
Chat. So say it again. CDR. My keyboard's not working. Can somebody type in on it?
Yeah, it's cdrinfo@cdrassessmentgroup.com. And then my website, cdr-u.com, is our newer website about the CDRU coach, which is a automated. You're going to get coached by the avatar, but it's no two are the same. It's an AI type coaching process. So we'll allow, provide to give back to help women be more self-aware. We'll give away 5. I also, again, I encourage you to read my book, Women Are Creating, the Glass Ceiling, Have the Power to End It. If you're interested in learning more about the risks, there's a lot in there where you could probably self-analyze pretty well.
Good.
And I just wish women well. I mean, let's stick together. Let's talk to each other, help each other. Don't be afraid to reach out for help, and I think that's how we make it through. And as you say, buy from other women.
Absolutely. There we go. Well, this is terrific, Nancy. Thank you so much. And guys, I mean, what she just offered is amazing. And I'm not kidding. I mean, I use the CDR assessment in my coaching practice, and it's different than other instruments in that it's very in your face, upfront about how you're getting in your own way. And people love it and get a lot of value out of it. So I'm glad people are going to hopefully take advantage of that. All right, so I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Donna.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you for being here. So I want to let everybody know that our upcoming guests on March 12th, we're going to have Julie Castro Abrams. She's a general partner with How Women Invest. She's a managing partner of Board Leaders and a board member of the Women's Funding Network. And Nan McKay, bless her heart, is going to facilitate for me that meeting. I'm working on some other folks later in the month. And then we've got our networking meeting on the 26th. And that's when you have a chance to get to know each other. And the price of admission is to bring somebody. Let's grow this thing, because you get the most value out of it if you've got other people to talk with and network with and make connections. Please sign up for a directory listing on pursepower.com if you haven't already. So if your business has a female CEO or president, or is half owned by women, or you have at least 20% women on your board, we want you in our directory. Let's see here. We've got some things that are coming, and I've been telling you that to help you be more effective at marketing yourself and getting the word out. And we'll talk about that down the road. Please do use our Google Chrome extension. You can download it from our website. You put it on your Google Chrome browser, and it allows you to find the businesses that are in our directory as you shop on your on Google Chrome extension. We also have phone apps that'll do the same thing. So use your Purse Power directory to buy from women-owned and women-led businesses. Please like and share our social media pages. Please tell people about this broadcast. We're bringing in national leaders. I really would love to have people get the value of the content we're bringing in here every Friday. Okay, any final words of wisdom, Nancy?
No, just thank you. And thank you for what you're doing for women-owned businesses. It's fabulous. Just love it. And I am very lucky to have known you for quite a few years now. So
yes, likewise. And I'm excited about what you're doing. I mean, seriously, you're doing bleeding edge stuff around coaching, and that's amazing. Amazing.
It's a lot of fun. It's the most exciting thing I've ever done. So I'm really having fun.
Very good. All right. Everybody, thank you again for being here. And remember, Purse Power, we have it. Let's use it. Have a great week, and I'll see you next Friday.